pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Kicking off with announcements. The Select Board is looking for interested individuals to fill vacancies on the following committees: Agricultural Commission, Cable Oversight Committee, Council on Aging, Facilities Assessment Committee, Historic District Commission, Historical Commission, IT Committee, and Veterans Advisory Committee. If you are interested in serving on a committee, please apply via email to taoffice@grafton-ma.gov by using our online portal, or send a letter of interest to the Town Administrator's Office at 30 Providence Road, Grafton, MA 01519. Grafton Recreation will host a casino night for families on Saturday, January 25th from 3 to 6 p.m. in the Municipal Center Gym. This is a free event, but donations of non-perishable food items for the Grafton Food Bank are appreciated and will be accepted at the door. The Community Preservation Committee is now accepting project applications for the annual town meeting to be held on May 12, 2025. The application is available on the CPC webpage at www.grafton-ma.gov and can be submitted online. The application deadline is February 1st. The Great American Rain Barrel is returning to Grafton. Similar to last year, residents can pick up residents will be able to order rain barrels directly through the company and pick them up at the town's DPW barn located at 64 Old Westboro Road. Rain barrels are currently available for purchase by residents at the discounted price of $50 using the coupon code GRAF25, that's GRAF25. To order your rain barrel, please visit www.greatamericanrainbarrel.com/community. All right, we have one public hearing tonight for a poll petition by National Grid on Hudson Ave.
Mr. Vice Chair,
Mr. Alamo.
if I may, read a legal notice. The Select Board will hold a public hearing on the request of National Grid for permission to locate poles, wires, and fixtures, including the necessary sustaining and protecting fixtures along and across the following public way on Hudson Ave. National Grid to install one SO pole on Hudson Ave beginning at a point approximately 152 feet south of the center line of the intersection of Cold Spring Drive and continuing approximately 20 feet in a westerly direction. National Grid is installing a stub pole to replace a tree guy that was in a tree that needed to be removed. The public hearing will be held now, January 21, 2025, in Conference Room A of the Grafton Memorial Municipal Center, located at 30 Providence Road, and via Zoom starting at 7 p.m. The link will be posted on the January 2021-2025 Select Board agenda. The purpose of this hearing is to provide an opportunity for public comment. Anyone wishing to attend in person or via Zoom anyone wishing to may attend in person or via Zoom.
Motion to open the public hearing?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Excuse me. Sorry. We have to go by roll call. Ms. Foley is remote. So, Mr. Alamo.
Alamo, aye.
Mr. Jefferson, aye. Mr. Hoffman. Ms. Foley?
Foley, aye.
Motion passes. Okay. We're now in the public hearing. I believe we have Rob Williams from National Grid. Rob, are you there? Can you hear us?
Yep, I can hear you. Hi.
You want to give us just a quick recap of the project and the request?
Yeah, so exactly what was stated when you guys introduced the petition is exactly what's happening. A tree's being removed, and we're taking the tree guy off of it and installing a stub pole to replace the tree guy.
Any questions from the board?
No.
Any questions from the public? If you want to just come up and name and address, please.
Good evening. My name is Chris Kazupi, resident of Grafton 64 Hudson Ave. So this stub pole that we're talking about is abutting my property as well as number 62. So the main question, I saw the diagram online, basically showing where the anchors are. My curious question is, how long is that anchor off of the pole? Main reason being is my neighbor has a fence and I just want to make sure that it's not going to obstruct her fence or, just want to make sure that it's in a good spot.
Well, that's very polite of you. Thank you. Rob, is that something you can answer for us?
I don't have an exact measurement here, but I imagine it's usually anywhere between 6 to 8 feet off the pole. So where the anchor goes. I'm not sure exactly where your fence is where the fence is in regard to the pole location, but
Yeah, it's pretty,
about roughly.
pretty set back. We had just kind of like measured, just walking from the center line of the street. We kind of know where it is, but I just wanted to see, just out of curiosity, how long that would be.
Rob, do you think, generally speaking, when they place the wire, they have some latitude to be able to make sure it's reasonably away from that fence?
Yeah, I can put in a note. I just don't know what the distance is off from where the pole's going to where the fence is. Because if it's like a short distance, then there might be an issue. But if there's enough room, then it should be fine.
Perfect. All right. Thank you.
What's the distance? You said you measured it or you walked it off. Like, what's the difference between where the pole? Is it marked where the pole is going to be placed?
No. We just walked from the center line of the street to where the actual tree is right now, and it's probably a solid 5 to 10 feet from the tree, and then it's probably another at least 10 feet. So it's well within the distance that he was just
Should be
talking
okay.
about. Yep. Perfect.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming in.
Any additional questions or comments?
Motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor by roll call, Mr. Alamo?
Alamo, I.
Ms.
Dolphin,
Dolphin?
aye.
Jefferson, aye. Mr.
Off and I.
Ms. Foley?
Foley, aye.
Okay, motion passes to close the public hearing.
Mr. Vice Chair,
Mr. Alamo?
I move the board vote to approve and sign the poll petition by National Grid for Hudson Ave as presented.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. By roll call, Mr. Alamo?
Alamo, I.
Daphne?
Dolphin, aye.
Jefferson, aye. Mr.
Off
Alamo?
and I.
Ms. Foley?
Foley, aye.
Okay, motion passes. 5-0. Okay. For appointments from the select board, we have one this evening. Miss Berry is unfortunately ill and won't be able to attend, so we're going to pass over the CPC appointment and go to the Historical Commission. And is Miss Schmidt available? Could you just please come up, introduce yourself, and what draws you to the board?
Hello, my name's Terry Schmidt, and I lived here in Grafton since 2011. I've raised two sons, a 17-year-old and a 19-year-old in Grafton, and my husband has lived with me since 2011 in Grafton as well. I have never given my time back to Grafton, and I recently ended up in a very fortunate position where I can step back from work. I have time. Yeah, exactly. I have time, and I would love to be able to donate some of my time to Grafton. And history is a topic that has always interested me. I think there's the context of history can provide a lot of foundation for the community and for the culture that we're building within Grafton itself. So, yeah, so I would love to volunteer for the commission.
Any questions from the board?
Yes.
Mr. Alamo?
Thank you, Mr. Jefferson. Thank you for volunteering. And what did you do? 30 years
In high tech.
in high tech.
I've
Just
worked-
curious.
Yeah, I've worked, most recently I was at Google for 3 years and I led strategy and programs for Google Cloud developers. Prior to that, I worked at AWS for several years, and prior to that, I was at Microsoft.
Wow.
30 years in high tech, you kind of want to take a step back
Oh, yeah.
and live life a little bit. So
I
that's
was in
what I'm
software
doing.
for 3.5 years.
There you go.
Yeah, that's it. That was good. Do you have the time? You obviously,
do.
you, it sounds like you have the time, but
I'm 100%
we
not
look-
working
Yep.
right now. So
Cool.
yeah, I have the time.
congratulations, by the way.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Just one thing. Again, appreciate you volunteering. We do have an IT department too, or committee.
I was
think
actually
when
looking at
when we
that.
when we have an
Yeah.
opening on that, we know who we're gonna call.
That's right.
That's what, once you get into, it's like a vacuum. Once you get in, you can't get out. So appreciate you
But
coming.
that's, yeah, and this is kind of a baby step, you know, my first opportunity to give back, but I'm hoping as time goes by, there will be other opportunities too.
Well, I hope you enjoy it.
Thank you very
Ms.
much.
Schmidt, so there is an opening on the IT
Oh, there is.
Oversight Committee, so just seriously think about it.
I will think about it. Yeah, I will check out the website for the IT Commission. Yeah, yeah.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you.
Any additional questions from anybody? Okay, you take a motion.
Mr. Vice Chair, I move the board vote to appoint Terry Schmidt to the Historical Commission.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Alamo?
Alamo, I.
Ms. Dauphiné?
Dauphiné, aye.
Jefferson, I. Ms. Rob?
And I.
Ms. Foley?
Foley, aye.
Okay, motion passes 5-0. Thank you for
Thank
coming
you.
in tonight. The TA's office will send you a letter about scheduling an appointment to be sworn in for the commission.
Wonderful. Excellent. Thank you very much.
Welcome, thank you. All right. So on to appointments from the town administrator. We'll now be discussing the Grafton PD departmental promotions.
Good evening. So if I could, I'd like to just, I can give a brief explanation as to why we're here with 4 promotions, and then have an opportunity, if it's okay with the board, just introduce each one of these gentlemen and sort of a quick bio on them to let people know why they're here, why we're promoting them. Thank you. So kind of what brings us to having, to make 4 promotions is when we had an open lieutenant's position back from when I got promoted to deputy chief. And then recently in October, promoted to chief, so that left pretty much a lieutenant and a deputy chief's position open. So through speaking with Evan, we decided it was probably a good idea going forward that we sort of put the deputy chief's position on hold temporarily and create 2 lieutenant's positions, or fill 2 lieutenant's positions, one essentially being operations and one like administrative. So obviously if we move 2 sergeants up for the lieutenant's positions, that vacates 2 sergeants' positions. So it puts us in, you know, a really good position to have some new leadership in those roles, which I'm really looking forward to. So with that, back in December of last year, we had a promotional assessment center that was proctored essentially, or issued by a third-party vendor. And we had 3 candidates for the lieutenant's position, and we had 6 candidates for the sergeant's positions. And so as a direct result of that, the promotional assessment, we wound up with the names of these 4 gentlemen that we're going to put forward. Those promotions will be effective February 9th. So, again, that just explains kind of why we're at a point where we're going to put 4 people forward. So I'd like to start with the officers who are being promoted to sergeant. We'll start with Officer Mark Benoit. Mark, if you want to step up to the podium, please. So Mark Benoit's been a police officer with us for, for 22 years. Prior to that, he was a dispatcher, 911 dispatcher for us. This is going to be annoying. And prior to that, he also worked with the fire department in Grafton. Mark has a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. Earlier on, he was on the police station building committee, of course, for the building that we're in now. Mark's one of our department firearms instructors. He's an armor. He's also a lead RAD instructor, which is the self-defense for females. And he's an ALICE instructor, which is essentially a civilian response to active shooter, which we have in our school district, also in some private and public buildings in town. Mark is a valued field training officer as well, and crime scene investigator, fire scene investigator, and kind of by default, Mark wound up with being like police communications system with us. I think you'll see as I introduce all 4 of these gentlemen that there's a number of collateral responsibilities that these guys all have. Some of it, I think, is a personal preference, something that they like, that they enjoy. Some of it, I think they all stepped up because they saw the need. So there's no real cool T-shirt that goes with being a police communication system guy. So I think Mark saw the need for that.
We should get one.
Yeah, Mark saw the need for that back when he was on the building station, police station building committee. So he stepped up, sort of learned probably trial by fire, and he's been, really valuable asset with the organization. Someone that we look to for planning in the future, someone that we look to for solving current problems, and someone that's typically on call for we got a problem, can you fix it, kind of thing. So yeah, we're fortunate to have Mark, and we look forward to having him on the command staff.
You forgot one thing, Mr. Chair. And also the owner of an extremely obedient, potentially ferociously looking German Shepherd, but really just like locked to his side on the walk.
Yeah, I see him on his walks.
Right?
Yeah.
So there's that too.
He also, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that he donates his personal time to the Boy Scouts of America quite a bit. I know both his sons were in that. And also he spearheads the toy drive that we sponsor along with the Grafton, with the Home Field Credit Union. So Mark's a big part of that as well. Okay.
Thank you. You got the floor.
No, just thankful for the opportunity as someone who grew up in town, raises my family in town. I'm thankful to have this opportunity for promotion and look forward to serving in this new role.
One other thing too is kind of family business for Mark too. His father was a police officer in town for many years. How long was your dad?
About 20 years before his cruiser accident.
Good.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
So next up, patrolman to be appointed and promoted is Dave Spellman. So Officer Dave Spellman brings about 22 years of law enforcement experience. He's been with the Grafton Police Department for 8 years. He has a master's degree in criminal justice with graduate certificates in leadership and policy development. Also a valued field training officer. He's a crisis intervention specialist. Recently, in the past 6 months, the FBI course. So he attended a 5-day, rather intense FBI hostage negotiation course. It's the only one in the country that of that status. So just passing that, is an accomplishment, and it's great to have him on our staff. He's also our representative for SIMS, which is Critical Incident Management Overdose Initiative. So he along with Officer Aju upload any information relative to overdoses to a portal that goes out to stakeholders. That's more or less covers it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a follow-up component.
Right. He's also been invited to be on District Attorney Early's Prevention and Support Network. Again, goes back to people in crisis and people in addiction. Dave started off our youth academy. He's been that's been a very big successful program that we run during the summer, of course, with our youth academy. Dave was instrumental in coordinating that and getting that off the ground and making it the success that it's been. He also saw the need for a hoarding resource program network within Grafton. Obviously, through our normal calls and services, we go into these houses and we see these circumstances that we just didn't feel like we had the information we could put together. This is, again, one of those things that our officers initiate on their own because it's something that they are passionate about, and that's something that Dave did. Recently, we've lined him up to be a senior center liaison, so he'll have monthly office hours with the senior center to be able to collaborate with the senior center and those folks that are there. And certainly recently and often he's recognized for his outstanding work assisting people in crisis. We could tell you several stories about the work that Dave's done in our community and outreach and helping homeless and people in crisis and different matters. And it's something that I think is dear to his heart, and we're incredibly fortunate to have him on our staff. Dave.
Thank you, Chief. I'd like to say thank you as well for the opportunity. Very, very grateful to be standing up here before you at this meeting. I too fell in love with the town of Grafton. I moved here with my family a little over 10 years ago, quickly fell in love. and saw the opportunity to transfer over to this department. And as quickly as I knew Grafton was my home, I quickly knew that Grafton PD was my home. I had experiences with other police departments, and it certainly wasn't apples to apples. It was evident that I had found my home. So I'm very happy for this new opportunity here with this department, and this new role, and looking forward to continuing to serve this great town.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Okay, so we'll move on to our sergeants that are going to be promoted to lieutenant. Sergeant Crosby, please. Good evening, everyone. This is Jim Crosby. I asked these guys all to kind of give me some bullet points on something that I could do for their bio that they were comfortable with. And I think Jim put like 3 bullets. But I've worked with him for 28 years. I know there's a few more than that, so this is going to go on a little bit longer than what he said is 3. But so he served the United States Air Force as a Desert Storm veteran. Jim's been a police officer with us for 28 years. Of course, he started off as a patrol officer. He moved into the detective division for quite some time. He certainly has a knack for criminal investigations. In 2016, Jim was promoted to sergeant. He's been a valued field training officer as well. And he also took over that role as a program manager for the field training. And he's really professionalized that. His documentation, his adherence to policy and protocol is second to none. He's also taken that with managing our property and evidence as well, control. So very grateful to have him for those things. He has an associate's in criminal justice. He has a FBI LEADA trilogy, which it's an FBI-sponsored law enforcement executive development process. So that's 3, obviously it's a trilogy, right? So that's 3, right? I think I've said 3 enough. So he's had that training, which is really, it's kind of short of getting to the FBI National Academy. That's about the best we can do. So that's good training. He's also likes our social media. Jim's on our Facebook. So he has some informative stuff, but everything that you see that's like a meme or that's lighthearted, that would be Jim. The other stuff's kind of all business as my end, but Jim enjoys that. Also events planning. So any event that you see us with, if he hasn't organized it himself, then he's involved with it to some degree, whether it's in our organization or if it's something outside. Just a couple things that he does is he coordinates a team from us, the police department, and a team of the fire department to do the U.S. Cancer Walk in Worcester in September, that is usually, right? And then he took the No Shave November thing into basically, like, if you want to grow a beard, you got to throw in $100. And then the union will match that $100. And we chose, it's home base, correct?
Project New Hope.
Project New Hope, I'm sorry.
Worcester.
In Worcester, that's the charity that we give. And I think he just got an award this year for our continued support of them, right? And if you fell victim to the dunk tank at the National Night Out, that's Jim too. He got behind that to sponsor that. And again, any money raised there goes to charities. In his personal life, he donates his time to Special Olympics. He volunteers with them, and he has been doing that since 2005. So can't say enough about what Jim brings to our administration, to our executive level. Fortunate to have him. I'm looking forward to getting him running.
I don't want to say anything.
It sounded like more than 3 bullets, though.
Just like everyone here, I'm super grateful for the opportunity. I don't know if you're aware, but I could have retired in August, on August 7th. I contemplated it, but the sole reason I didn't retire is really because of this Grafton community. If I worked anywhere else, I wouldn't be standing here. But it's a testament to everyone that makes Grafton such a great place to raise a family and to work. So I recognize we're all very fortunate, and I'm grateful to everyone here and grateful for the opportunity from the chief. So I'm looking forward to some new challenges. Thank you.
Great. I might have threatened him too if he retired. Allegedly. So last and certainly not least, Sergeant Liam O'Rourke. So Liam started with us as a reserve officer in 1996. He became a full-time police officer in 2002. Currently, but ever since 2006, he's been on the Blackstone Valley Drug and Counter Crime Task Force, which he is a big part of and a valued member of that organization. In 2016, Liam was promoted to sergeant. So you've never worked anything other than overnights, right? Pretty much. Pretty much. So the poor guy's been on overnights forever. So I'm sure he's looking forward to this lieutenant's promotion, but I'm also certain he's looking forward to not like living like a bat. So it'd probably be really good for him in his personal life. So he's also a valued field training officer with us. As a criminal investigator, even though he was never assigned to the detective division, he has an ability for criminal investigation, just like a really good street cop that leads to. He's solved robberies and, burglaries and narcotics investigations. Very well respected, very highly thought of in the Blackstone Valley area, in Worcester County in general, for his knowledge and his experience in criminal investigations. So we're fortunate with that as well. But he's a drug recognition expert. He has a master's in criminal justice, also the FBI Leader Trilogy, and countless accommodations for his work as criminal investigation. So Liam's a really strong street cop, a really strong street boss. We're going to miss him as far as that goes, but I know that he's trained the people behind him, and we're looking forward to having him on our executive staff as well. Liam?
So I'd like to thank you guys all for having me here tonight. I'm honored to be standing before you to accept this new role and to continue to serve the citizens of the town. I'd like to thank the chief for this opportunity, as well as all my colleagues that both present and past that I learned from and kind of shaped my career. Without them, it wouldn't have been possible to grow and develop into this new role. So I'd like to thank everybody for the support and the faith and trust that they instilled in me to guide them and to help this town in any capacity that was presented to me. So again, I thank you and thank the Madam Chair that's on Zoom as well.
Thanks, Liam.
All right, thank you.
So they officially start February 9th. We're going to have a pinning ceremony at the police department on the 10th, the evening of the 10th. So I'll make sure that information gets out to the board. We're certainly welcome to attend.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm just gonna kick things off quick. I guess just thank you, Chief, for coming in and introducing everybody. Also appreciate that you got the beard still going. I'm a big fan. I think it looks great. One of the things that Chief Minardi, before him Chief Crapo, and Evan have worked on is identifying some new opportunities for advancement and making those things available. We with the recognition that it can be tough, and there's only so much growth available within the department. So these are competitive positions, as we heard, and I think you all should be incredibly proud of what you've achieved. And again, just going through, Officer Spellman comes up frequently when I visit the senior center. I know he's a valued resource over there. There are very few traffic details. I don't see Officer Benoit working, and I've had the pleasure of spending a lot of time with him through scouts, and he's very generous with his time there. Sergeant O'Rourke just had a hell of a drug bust down in South Grafton last week, 2 weeks ago. And same thing with Sergeant Crosby, and he's just another guy who's everywhere, and as you said, organizing a lot of stuff, and just a good community presence. So I just want to thank you all for your service and what you bring to Grafton. Let you know that we deeply appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Mr.
Oh,
Anthony?
yeah. Chief, thank you very much. We had an accident last week, and we exchanged a little an email here or there. I don't know, Wednesday or Thursday, whatever day it was. Right. And just to point this out, I remember looking up safest towns in Massachusetts, and it depends what you're looking up in your source, but we're one of them. And it's because of all of you and the others that are back at the station and driving around right now. And, that's not trivial. And it is important to share that information with anybody who's watching these meetings or anybody who will come back. It's because of selfless, hardworking, courageous individuals like all of you who are very worthy of your promotions, and congratulations. And I'm very happy for all of you. but you keep the town safe. And it's not, I sort of feel like there's some unsung hero-ness going on with this a little bit with folks. I don't know if they hear about it as much, but they should, because you're amazing. And we're grateful for it. Andy's right. The town is really grateful and appreciative of all the work that you do. And further, I wish I'd have prepared this because I really didn't prepare anything, but I knew I wanted to say something about you tonight, Chief. I hope that you're happy because you're doing the right thing here by looking within your department and promoting from within people that have worked their hearts out for a long time. And obviously with your certifications and your training and your sacrifices, and you work in the middle of the night like the graveyard shift for 20 years? I did that for one summer. It's a lot. It's a lot. So all of that, this town owes you a tremendous debt of gratitude. And I'll just speak for myself. Thank you all very much. I think you're amazing. I really do. You're courageous, hardworking, amazing people. We're very lucky. Thank you.
Want to follow that?
Yeah, I not really.
Sorry.
Gonna hold me to 2 minutes here. All great stuff, Chief. Great job. It's great to hear about all the certifications and the education and the experience that this group has. And I think it's good for the people watching to hear that. They get to know these gentlemen a little bit better and realize everything that goes into the job. It's not just getting in a cruiser every day or whatever they're doing. There's a lot that goes into it, and they have a lot of training, a lot of expertise. The one common thing that I heard from all of them is that, and you're looking at I wrote down the years that they have all been here. They all dedicated 20 plus years into being a police officer, law enforcement, and into Grafton, and even our new sergeant, been here 8 years and over 20, and he appreciates, after being somewhere else, being here. So I think the common theme is that people come here and they stay, and that speaks about the quality of our community and the quality of leadership within that department. And that stemmed from Chief Crapo, and it's continuing with what he has built with all of you, and I just hope it continues. So wonderful job. Congratulations to all of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I guess I have to go last. Yeah, I really appreciate everything that was said tonight. The one thing that sort of stuck out to me is, what does leadership look like as far as the police department in Grafton? And this is what I heard. I heard lots of, classes that you guys went to, and like investigations and, dealing with drugs and all sorts of sort of policing and technical skills. But the thing that really stuck out to me were toy drives, Project New Hope, cancer walks, scouts, youth leadership programs, hoarding, crisis management, homeless assistance, addiction, social media, Special Olympics. That is amazing. Just the initiative that individuals take on the leadership team in this department to be integrated into the community in so many different ways that really are well above and beyond your official duties. It's really impressive. It's the type of thing that I think we're able to do in a town like Grafton in a way that you couldn't in Boston or larger communities. You guys are able to be really involved personally in these passion projects that embed you in the community in a way where it builds trust and sort of community spirit. And I'm here for it. I love all of it. And I think you've made some excellent choices. I know it must have been difficult going through that whole assessment process. I know that those can be really nerve-wracking and all that. So yeah, I'll just pile on with the love fest we have going on for you guys tonight. Really, really appreciate everything you guys do.
Yeah, please.
Andy? Hi, Anne Marie. Sorry, I'm not there. I'm via remote. But to all the officers that spoke this evening, I really do appreciate, your heartfelt words about this town and your commitment to this town. And I do think that shows through in the department and your actions out there. So I really appreciate that you are all so invested in Grafton with your families here and the amount of time that you've spent here. So I appreciate that. And I just want to offer all 4 officers my sincere and heartfelt congratulations, and I wish you well.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your time.
Gentlemen, you're welcome to stay, but under no obligation if you have to serve or protect.
Don't do it.
Be with you.
Mr. Vice Chair, hang on a second, guys. We do have to make a motion. So if you
Yes.
just hang on one second. With gratitude and respect, I move the board vote to affirm the following promotions in the Grafton Police Department effective February 9th, 2025. Sergeant James Crosby to the rank of lieutenant. Sergeant Liam O'Rourke to the rank of lieutenant. Officer Mark Benoit to the rank of sergeant. And Officer David Spellman to the rank of sergeant.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, by roll call, Mr. Alamo.
Alamo, aye.
Daphne.
Dauphin, aye.
Jefferson, aye.
Often I.
Foley?
Foley, aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Okay, moving on, we have some new business. We're gonna update the Economic Development Commission charge, and, Mr. Dauphin is gonna lead that discussion.
Yeah, thank you. So it's a minor change. We're not doing anything with, at this point at least, with the content of the charge as far as kind of, what we're going to be working on and the goals and objectives. We found ourselves in a situation where the makeup of the committee versus the charge doesn't quite match. So, and it's a good group. Everybody's, works well together and on board. So we would like to tweak the charge if we could. Currently, we don't have a member, and I guess this is the tweak, that we don't have a member from the zoning board of appeals. So there's never been, I started on the committee, I think in September, there's never been an appointment made from that committee. So whether they're aware that they have a seat on the board or not, I'm not sure. But we do have somebody from planning. The zoning member, I don't think is a critical piece. So what I would ask the board to consider voting on is changing. We can do two things. We can either, because I think that the members qualify, we can either add an additional member at large to make it 4, or we could make from 1 business owner to 2. I think long term probably makes sense to make it a member at large, because we can certainly have a member at large, obviously, also be a business owner if they live in town. So I'd ask them to consider making that change.
Any questions or comments from anybody?
That makes sense. Because you might have people that are working in professional positions that might bring an area of some sort of expertise. So they could be good to have them not specific to a Grafton business owner or specific to a committee or a board. Could
Right.
be just someone that lives here.
Yeah. Right now, I don't know if you guys have the chart. We have one member of this board, 1 member of planning, 1 business owner, and 1 ZBA, and then 3 members at large. So we're just basically going to 4 members at large. We'd still have two elected officials represented and staff
Makes sense.
to help out. So I guess if the board wishes, if there's no objection, I could just make a motion to change the membership of the Economic Development Commission to add 1 member at large, making it 4, and deleting the zoning board member.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Any discussion? I'm gonna hop in just quick. I did reach out to Mr. McCusker from the ZBA today just to have a quick touch base on that. They, as I understand it, they are aware, but they've been reluctant to appoint somebody because ZBA, has some, I believe he called it quasi-judicial oversight in town, so they felt it could be a potential conflict of interest. Having somebody who could rule on a potential new business scenario on the EDC at the time, and something that he indicated they've been meaning to take up with us. So all that to say, it sounds like the ZBA is fully in support of this and moving forward with it. Okay, we can do a roll call vote. Mr. Alamo?
Alamo, aye.
Daphne?
Dauphin, aye.
Jefferson? Aye. Offen?
Often I.
Ms. Foley?
Foley, aye.
Okay, motion passes. Now, everybody get comfortable, and we'll turn it over to Evan and Mary for the FY26 budget overview.
Yes, thank you. It's been a fun meeting, so let's go ahead and bring it down a notch.
That's good.
Got nervous for a second. There's no words. So just while I have a captive audience, remind you all that we have the ClearGov budget book and transparency website. So if you go to the financial transparency tab on our main page, it will bring you over to this site and you can see data going back to, I think 2014 and earlier, depending on what data you're looking for. So, go ahead. Oh, geez. Get rid of all that. Before I go too much farther, I just want to preface this presentation. So this is not the full budget presentation that I give to the Finance Committee. This is really designed to be a little bit more streamlined and solicit feedback from the board before we go to the Finance Committee for the whole dog and pony show. So what three things were we seeking to do this year? One is maintain level services. One is to continue to have a competitive work environment. And the third is to continue to fund the Grafton school system in a competitive way. Just for quick overview, we continue to have a AA plus stable rating. Our OPEB liability is $65 million. And we have gotten that fund up to $750,000, which is now up to 1.15%. And I'll remind you that when Mary and I started this project, we were at 111,000 of 65 million. So we're chipping away to get there.
So that might not seem like a lot, but the sort of regularity and like consistency of those contributions is a really good demonstration that Grafton is taking this seriously, even though we can't put millions of dollars a year into it because we just don't have that. We're not ignoring it, and I think that's important to be said.
Thank you. We also have pretty robust stabilization and free cash. So our municipal stabilization is about $5.1 million currently, and our free cash is the highest that I could find on record for the town of Grafton, which is $4.4 million. It's actually higher than that, but the way the free cash works is that any liabilities that you have are deducted from your free cash amount for the simple, I guess, idea of if you didn't pay your bills, this would be held in reserve. That gives us a current fiscal reserve of 11%, which is pretty darn healthy for Grafton. All right, so just looking at what our levy ceiling is doing, fiscal 24, we had a $50.6 million tax levy. Our 2.5 increase was about 1.2 million, and our new growth, we budgeted for 800,000, but our new growth came in at about 1.2 million dollars. So at the end of the year, even though when we went through the budget process, we had about a $15,000 excess levy capacity, by the time we got to the year end, we had about $669,000. Going into this year, we have a $53 million tax levy with about a $1.3 million projected 2.5 tax increase. And currently we have our new growth pegged at 923, almost 924. Looking at just what we have kind of in the pipeline, we feel comfortable there. For this slide, I don't calculate excess levy because we're too far away from the final budget, but that gives us a levy ceiling of roughly $55.5-ish million. This is the ever-running override capacity slide, and I just wanted to put this in here because this should be the last year that we see this, as far as from when I was hired. So you can see we've drawn down on that since fiscal 2021, and we have no more of that excess capacity that was was provided by the override moving into the fiscal 2026 budget. Here is our new growth chart. As you can see, we've been trending upwards since 2015, with a couple of outlier years where we've had a little downturn, but pretty consistent growth. Okay. Now we get into the operating budget, and really the takeaway from this is the total variance that you see between the two, in my opinion, anyways. So general government going from about 14.6 to about 15.8. That's an 8.6% change. However, I just want to point out that number includes pension, Medicaid, FICA, and health insurance, because that's where it lives in the budget. So
For the whole town.
For the whole town. If you remove that from that section of the budget, which I'm particularly keen on because that's my section of the budget, our increase is 2.32%. So I like to call that out so it's not, we're just going out of control.
Most of that is insurance.
Most of that is insurance, and I have another slide on that, and it's hard to control. So
out of just one question.
Sure.
So out of that, let's just take this year, that 14.6 million. How much of that is insurance?
$6+ million.
So about 40-something%.
Yeah.
40%. Yeah. All right. So it's a big chunk of that.
Yeah, I think I have a slide that breaks it out further when we get to the insurance part. Mary, feel free to unmute and tell me that I'm incorrect at any point when I answer questions on the fly.
Oh, she will.
Yeah. Mary will, yes, that's true. Okay, so public safety, we're looking at about a 3.1% increase. A lot of that is salary changes, either contractual. They're what you just saw tonight with the 4 folks at the police department. It isn't really a big impact because we aren't filling the deputy chief position, so we've been able to just create the 2 lieutenants positions, which I think is smart, and obviously reaches the goal of what the chief is trying to attain.
So that deputy position will just go away?
What's
the intention?
So so the intention is we're gonna leave it for now. I think that the traditional thought process is that we want to be promoting from within, and it's hard to promote to a deputy chief when you have had a vacant lieutenant position.
Yep.
So I think the intent is to have folks serve in the lieutenant role,
Got it.
get an understanding, and then maybe build a candidate pool to pull from.
Okay. Yeah, because I think that deputy position is important,
Mhm.
sort of structurally.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Yep, I don't think you'd get any argument from that. My conversation with the chief was just the natural stepping stones of progression of leadership and having that just hole there for now.
Okay.
So public safety overall, 3.1%. The public schools, they are running at about a 6.8% currently. The last budget figures that we have are 48,084,000. BVT, we have an 8%, and I just want to make sure that everyone understands that that's just an estimate that Mary and I use. Historically, you're looking at between 6 and 10% ish, so we pick 8 because we can move 2% kind of easily and hope that we're not any higher than that. Public Works is running currently at a 7.2%. I will say that number is a little misleading in my estimation, and that's because we've been funding that MS4 stormwater permitting, and we've been funding that via the ARPA funds. We've supplemented it with that, and now that's rolling off, and so we've got to look at funding mechanisms for that. So part of it is that, but I also don't, in my opinion, that probably won't stay at 7.2%. It'll probably come down as we work our way through the next week here. And then just the only other thing is that it being what it is, in a $80 million budget, that 7.2% is it's a 2%, it's a $200,000 shift, right? It's not 7% of 25 million, you know, so I just want to point that out. Health and Human Services actually decreased by 2.6%. Culture and Rec is up 6.8%. However, some of that 6.8% is not funded through the general fund. We're using some revolving funds into that, but it still shows up there. And our debt service is decreasing because we haven't taken on any new debt. So that gives us a total change in the operating budget of 3.89%. Feel free to jump in and interrupt me at any time. So I've kept this slide in here. We started this slide about 2 years ago. This is our environmental increases, or increases that are hard for us to control because we're not really in the driver's seat as much as we might like to be. So our Maya regular town umbrella insurance is going up 14,000. That's roughly 2%. Our pension liability is up 300,000, which is 9.7%. Mary has been working with Worcester County Regional, understanding the pension liability a little bit better, and what's driving our costs. You know, the underlying drivers of that is obviously whenever you add staff, which, you know, really in the last 2 years we haven't had tremendous change as far as the staffing numbers, but staff salaries, every time they increase, our pension liability increases. There's also Mary was working on this. It's kind of interesting. So when we hire, let's say we hire a new police officer for an open position that we have, the town's initial assessment is $10,000 right off the bat that we have to put into that. So, you know, while it's awesome to see all this turnover, when those positions get you know, we get vacancies, now we've got that initial upfront hit that kind of drives some of these numbers. So, but Mary's been working on that diligently in the background. Our Medicaid, our Medicare and FICA is up 25%. As we navigate that system. Mary, do you want to speak to FICA a little bit, or Medicare, or what drives that number?
Yes. Historically, the FICA line has been underfunded. So this increase will put it in line with our wages.
All right. Thank you, Mary. Health insurance continues to be a bit of a saga for the town of Grafton. So we've been working really hard on this. Our initial insurance assessment was 28.5%. We went out for an RFP and got turned down by 4 separate insurers, and one insurer that did bid was 28.7, so that does seem in line. We are working with our current insurer to try to get us to a reasonable state. And so right now they're telling us to project 15%. Hopefully we're closer to 13%. However, we have some room within that line because we generally have that line funded a little bit over what we project we're going to need, and that's because people come on, people go off. You hire somebody that's not on your insurance leave, somebody with a family gets on, right? You need to have that buffer. And so we have pegged it right now at 10%, using up a little bit of some of that buffer, but also hoping that we wind up closer to 13-12%. Sanitation is up 2.7%. That's 36,000. And BVT, like I said, we don't control that, but we have it pegged at 8. So just those environmental increases that we don't control is an increase to the budget of $1.2 million, and that's about 9.2%. So before we even really start talking about positions and services and everything else, 1.2 million is coming off the top at a minimum at this point. So
And half of that is insurance.
half of that is insurance
for the entire town.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. So, we anticipate a total revenue package of about 84.8 million. Our total expenses are around 86.6 million, and right now we're running a projected deficit of 1.7 million. So we are also, I just want to make sure that this is clear, we're in the phase of the municipal budget where that number is 1.7 million, and then tomorrow it's 1.5, and then the day after it's 1.8. And numbers are still coming in. We're moving things around. We're building the budget block by block. This just happens to be where we are as of today. Okay. So some of the changes to expenses, which we just went over, retirement, health insurance, those are uncontained. Blackstone Valley, we have plugged in a 2% COLA across the board for non-union folks. The union folks have between a 2% and a 3% depending on their contract and what year of their contract they are in. And so far our energy lines remain relatively stable. Mary and I did negotiate contracts for gas and electricity. So we're comfortable with where we are for both of those services. We are intending in general government to remove 2 part-time positions. Public safety, we've moved the the cruisers into the capital plan. And we also just discussed the tonight and what that does basically to the budget. Schools, see the presentation that the school superintendent will give. Public Works, I've already talked about MS4. We also have a little bit of change in the highway department, but it's really just training and paving and overall pretty minor dollars. We also continue to look at grants. So in fiscal 24, we closed out the year at almost 1.4 million, 1.379, which is pretty good. And so far I should say fiscal 25, I apologize. We're at just shy of $1 million. And there's actually, I do know of 2 grants that we've just received that are not included in those numbers.
Great.
We continue to seek one-time revenues from earmarks. And that's a redundant piece I'll take out before I go to FinCom. So variables to consider. It's only January. Things are going to change pretty frequently. Health insurance number really gets firmed up in February, generally speaking, and we're headed in that direction, obviously, because dates change. It is likely that new growth is higher than estimated, but Mary keeps me on a short leash with that number. But also we want to be conservative because, as we've discussed over the past 4 years, you want to be to the good, because if you're wrong, it's immediate cuts to services, and we don't want to go down that road.
What's the number you put in for new growth?
923.
Okay.
So, and then we don't have all of the governor's numbers. Actually, I got to remove that bullet point. If you could remind me to do that, Will.
Yep.
Wow, that's a lot smaller than.
Oh, boy.
I'll just read it out loud to you, Mark.
Thank you.
So, thank you. Go ahead and look at it over here. All right. Could you hold that out there, Will? So, the purpose of tonight's discussion is to look to you folks for some input on where you'd like to see this budget headed, as Mary and I work our way through this with the department heads and the school department. So we put together kind of 3 overarching scenarios. Scenario 1 is a mixture of free cash stabilization and reductions to close that gap, from 1.7 to 0, right? And so we would target a free cash stabilization use of about $1 million. When we get down into capital, you'll see our free cash usage. We do have robust free cash currently. We also know of at least $1.5 million in free cash that is already headed to the free cash way through permitting. And so that would be in the following fiscal year's certified free cash, in which we could replenish some of our stores, so to speak. So the pros of that, obviously, we avoid an override. That's a pretty big pro. The cons is it's risky if new growth tapers off, and there is the potential to create a larger shortfall in the next fiscal year. So you're using one-time money to stem the tide, so to speak. However, if we don't see some of these projects that are already permitted come to fruition in the short term, or pick up enough new growth also in the very short term, that could put us in a sticky situation come fiscal 27. Scenario 2 is override. And so the pros of that, obviously it fills the funding gap and it raises the levy, which is there moving forward. The cons, it's an override, and so you got to go through that process, and it costs costs people money on top of the regular growth that we are currently seeing, and so that's not sought after. Scenario 3 is just straight up reductions. So the pro of that is it adjusts Grafton to the current Prop 2.5 and new growth projections. So it forces us to live within our means. The con is that there's going to be major service disruptions and loss of staff. You all received our line item budget as a comparatory spreadsheet. We will have more of that data available as we go. Speaking for the budget that Mary and I build, there really isn't a ton of places to cut that doesn't result in either a loss of a position or a loss of something that goes directly to services. And that's just the facts. So what we were hoping to garner from you folks this evening is kind of taking your temperature on which direction we should be headed, because it is quite a bit of work, and we want to make sure we're not spinning our wheels into a scenario that people aren't going to get behind. And this will be a similar conversation that we have with FinCom as well. But you folks get the first bite of the apple.
What a delicious apple it is.
Yep. It's actually the second bite Mary and I've been. Don't go into that. That's the next part.
Gotcha.
I'm taking everybody down here, and then we're gonna go up on Capitol, because Capitol's more fun than all of this.
Bummer. I have a bummer right now.
Yeah, I apologize, Mark. I knew I was. I actually told my wife this morning. She said, "What are you doing today?" I'm like, "I'm gonna bum Mark out."
Yeah, well, mission accomplished.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With the first scenario, and those reductions, like you said, it avoids the override this year, but it's not sustainable, right? It seems like it's just pushing the override off by a year or two.
Yep, I think that's probably. Yeah, well, if we continue in our current trajectory, yes. Right, we do have a number of projects, and we are, we're looking at our revenue projections for our new growth, and trying to, pinpoint where we're going to be, and those are favorable numbers. However, we're reticent to rely on them too hard, because as we've seen with a number of developments or initiatives or what have you, you don't want to count your chickens before they've hatched, because if it's in the budget as revenue and that doesn't materialize, that's mid-year freezes and cuts, and we don't want to go through that. That's really not a good way to budget. So I do think that the scenario number one, the benefits of that really are, on a number of levels. One is that we would cut back and be even closer kind of to where we need to be. But also kind of kick that can at least 1 year down the road. And I don't want to use the term hope, but believe that our projections are going to be more in line with where we need to be for fiscal 27. But, sorry, Mark, but we don't have a crystal ball, and I don't want to give anyone the impression that we can foresee exactly what that growth number is going to look like, because we don't control the market.
Right.
The other pro that I do want to point out that I didn't put into the slide, but that we've been discussing, is that it does show, in my opinion, the public, that before we go back to the override well, or have any of those conversations, we've gone down every avenue we have to try to make this budget successful and to avoid going back and asking the taxpayers for more.
Mr. Vice Chair.
Mr. Alamo.
So I can verify that. My personal experience with Evan and Mary, spent a little time with them, actually a lot of time with the two of them. And thank you both for walking me through. I mean, I wouldn't say line by line, but it wasn't just one line. And we went through a lot of discussion around, just comparative budget, comparing budget this year, last year, year prior, next 2, 3, 4 years, and their philosophical approach. And I will say that's true, Evan, from my point of view, that the town should know that their town administrator and their finance director are scrutinizing to a level of detail that probably most people don't get to. And it's a little bit harder to understand unless you're really into it, and it takes a certain kind of, I want to be like a little goofy, but like a certain bit, like a little bit of a geek to get into these things. And boy, do they have fun talking about their budgeting, and they're a little too happy about it. But they certainly know what they're talking about, and they're certainly trying very hard to just cut, think creatively, budget wisely, budget carefully. And so that's true. I would say though, Evan, that I don't talk to 20,000 people in the town, but the ones that I do talk to, it doesn't feel like there's a huge appetite for an override. It doesn't feel like that's something that's overwhelmingly supported right now. That said, we do have some things to think about in the years to come. Scenario 1 sounds great, sort of, because it sort of addresses one big elephant in the room that is not necessarily the most appealing elephant in the room, and that is the town. It doesn't feel like an override is what people want and would vote for. Could be wrong. But we still have to find a way to scrutinize and budget deeper, or cut deeper, or look at these numbers deeper. I know what it's like to be that last bullet point twice in my career, and it stinks. But I also know that, having talked to some of those folks in years later, the ones that have laid me off, we didn't have a choice. It's tough. So I wonder if there's a way to look at reductions, harder, painful, in budgeting, not services or people, but budgeting. And I wonder if there's a way that maybe we can take a closer look at what that growth could possibly be. I don't want to rely on hope as a strategy, but I also don't want to be that last bullet point. I don't want to be the person that offers that information to anybody, having been through it myself. It stinks. It's not great. So anyway, I don't know what that means to everyone here, except that you've done a great job with it. You're trying hard. You obviously are both very qualified to do the work. I do have one question.
Yeah.
Mary, what do you think about one of these three?
Oh, don't do that, Mark.
Sorry. You deserve to be heard.
She does.
Oh,
She does.
thank you. Ultimately, I believe the forecast speaks for itself. We will ultimately need an override. The forecast in 5 years, we're 9 million in deficit. I believe I agree. We need to look at our budget and see if we can reduce it budgetary wise, not in any employees or services, but let's go back to the drawing board. Let's look and see if we can cut some, expenses. But yeah, we will need ultimately an override for the town of Grafton if we continue to spend the way we're spending.
Thank you.
If I might, Andy?
Yeah, Ms. Foley.
I appreciate the conservative nature that both Evan and Mary take on this. It's the way I look at budgets as well. I think that having all the information that we have in front of us this evening is certainly very helpful. I think offering these scenarios is also helpful, and I hope that townspeople can see and understand that either way down the road we do face some issues. With that being said, I do appreciate Evan mentioning, kind of going back to that override well, and the notion of what the appetite for that is out there right now. So I think that there's still a lot of numbers, as Evan indicated, to come in. I'm particularly interested in the school side of things and hearing, what they've done and what their cuts are, et cetera. And I know that that's being looked at. So I don't know that for me personally, I'm ready to weigh in on a scenario per se. It's almost like, potentially a mixture of the three almost. I agree that, scenario one, while avoiding an override for folks in this particular year, might be a positive. It does, we still have an issue, right? Forthcoming, and we're also relying on some information that we're not 100% secure on. So I just want to indicate to folks in the town that I take this extremely seriously. We all on this board are also taxpayers. I've seen my taxes go up substantially. So I personally don't take this lightly whatsoever. And I've poured over all these numbers, over the last 3 years as well. So, but I do appreciate Mary and Evan's work on this. And again, just to highlight, their conservative nature. And I think that that's putting our town in a position where we do have, some of these OPEC things being funded, et cetera. We're looking better in some regards. So I guess I'm not offering a solution in terms of the scenarios, but to echo Mark, I am out there a lot. I feel like I speak to a lot of people every week, and the appetite for an override, is not overwhelming. That's all I can say. So the more that we can reduce this number from 1.7 to wherever we can get to, I think, then we'll have a better idea of what we need to do.
Mr. Vice Chair, just so you know, you do have a hand on Zoom. Don't know if you want comment at this time or if you want to wait till the end.
Why don't we wait till the end?
Okay.
You indicated there's capital after this?
Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions you want to weigh in, Matt?
I'm not sure.
You can wait. It's fine.
So I had some individual questions, but maybe I'll just hold off on those as we think about the scenarios. Can you maybe expound a little bit on the risk of scenario one, that that's the second risk?
Yep. So if you use one-time money in an operational budget like this, let's say we use $1 million because it's easy to talk about. Yep. Just $1 million. So let's say we use $1 million in one-time revenue, which the town of Grafton currently is doing very well with.
Yep.
One-time monies. You still need to make that revenue up in your next budget cycle.
Right.
So it really just moves that bar higher when we come into the next fiscal year. So we now have to meet our growth of our operational budget plus the $1 million that we spent in this fiscal year. So there are communities that do that, and that's kind of how they live. That's not a traditional Grafton approach. The predicament that we find ourselves in is that, you've got these, as I said earlier, you've got projects in the pipeline. We know that there's some growth there. We've calculated some of that growth that my plan is to have that as part of my FinCom discussion.
Yep.
Which we're still working our way through it. But again, the risk there is that we don't own any of those projects. So it's not like I can force somebody to put a shovel in the ground, or get funding faster, or start building the thing. And so, having lived through, 8 Pines an example, 244 Worcester Street's an example. If we included those revenues at the time they were projected to be completed, we'd be in bad shape.
Right.
And that's why we don't count those revenues until they're, cash in hand,
Appreciate that.
so to speak. So we're very cautious of that. And saying that out of the other side of my mouth, I will also say, but we have seen pretty consistent good growth, and we've seen a lot of projects stacking up in the pipeline.
So scenario one is potentially most appropriate if the sort of projects and other revenue side upside
Mhm.
continues to break well
Correct.
for us.
Yep.
Otherwise, what we're talking about is we're just moving the sort of the override amount, like shortfall would be the same. But you'd just
Potentially,
you'd
yeah.
be asking for it starting next year versus this year.
Yep. Yep.
Um,
But I mean, that's a potential risk, and that's
And the downside
It's a real
is if
risk.
things broke the other way, that you'd not only be asking for that additional amount, but more. Yeah, it's an interesting scenario. I'm wondering where you came up with $1 million. Like, is that just a number that you and Mary felt comfortable with based on our historical free cash position?
So, that is the number that Mary stopped yelling at me about, so I felt comfortable at $1 million. No, I will say scenario number one is primarily driven by me trying to give the board some options and the town some options to discuss. I don't want to portray that as this is Mary's number one pick.
I didn't take it that way.
Okay.
Nope.
No, I just want for residents at home who don't really know.
This
me
is just
or
this
Mary,
is kind of a new this is a new option for Grafton.
Yep.
This is not how we've done things historically. I'll be interested to see what FinCom says about this, but
yes.
that's why I'm asking questions about it.
Yes, and I appreciate that. I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't in trouble tomorrow when I got to work. No. So we are, again, these are scenarios that we want to put everything on the table so that people understand what the options are, understand both the risks and the potential upsides as we, continue to navigate throughout the rest of this budget cycle here.
Okay.
I think that regardless, my conversations with Jay, I don't know that we're using this term when we've met together, but we are talking about, contingent budgets. So we don't know what the scenarios are. I also don't want to give the impression that we're just waiting to see who likes what scenario. We are building budgets to each scenario. And we'll continue to hone in as we feel that people start weighing in on what direction we should head.
Got it. I mean, I'm not in favor of scenario 3, but some combination of techniques in 1 and 2 might be something that I would be in favor of. I guess I just want to address the appetite for an override question. Never in the history of municipal budgets or towns has there ever been an appetite for an override. That's just not a thing. So I don't really know how to gauge whether there's appetite or not. There's never appetite until the town says this is what's needed, this is how much it's going to cost, and here's how it's going to translate to your sort of homeowner tax bill. And then people get to decide whether they have appetite or not for it. But, as a general idea, do you want an override? 100 times out of 100 people are going to say no. So I don't know how to gauge really, the idea of an appetite or
I
not.
think the gauge is a little bit tighter these days. People are feeling a big pinch
That's
from a
what
cost
we,
perspective
that's what
in their everyday life.
I heard the same thing during COVID, and we needed the override, and it was proposed and it was passed, and so I don't know. I'm just saying that I talked to a lot of residents too, and the word appetite I just think is somewhat irrelevant at this stage because there's so many unknowns that I just don't think it's it's a good term to sort of throw around at this
I
point.
can try something different, but whatever it is, it doesn't seem like it's a great option. Although, Matt, if that's the option that is the best one, it needs to be presented in the most articulate and thoughtful way to the people of the town, and hopefully that will resonate well with them. I'm not telling you that. Yeah, you're probably right. That's a fair point. No, I don't want to pay more ever. Fair, but the language and the ferocity is a little bit different. It just feels a little different, and it could be because gas is $3.50 a gallon. I don't know. Maybe it's just the people that I'm talking to. Whatever the language is, people are saying things like, "Well, I have to live with this, so why can't everyone else do that?" Whatever that is. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It's a fair point on your part, Matt. But whether it's appetite or like it or don't like it, whatever the language is, it is what it is.
Yeah. Okay. I just yeah. I don't really know like which scenario I have any particular preference for. I will be interested to hear what FinCom has to say about option scenario one. I think that's an interesting one. I'm certainly not advocating for an override or not. But I guess what I am advocating for is that I would not like to see major service disruptions and loss of staff, and I think that's Mark, you and I are very much in alignment on that.
Yep.
So me, it's more it's more of a matter of how do we fund level services,
Right.
than anything. One or two, I don't know, and the budget's going to continue to fluctuate, as Evan mentioned. So, yeah, I don't know. No, 3 isn't a good option for me, but some combination of 1 or 2, sure. I guess that's where I land on it.
If I can jump in again,
Sure, Ms. Foley.
because perhaps I used the word appetite as well, and I don't think you should get hung up on that word whatsoever. It's an indication of what folks are looking for, and I think that what Evan is presenting here are, number one, being a creative option, and that what we need to show us, Evan's department, the school department, etc., is that the town is doing its best to cinch its belt and to do what we can to minimize impact to folks in terms of increases in taxes. And I don't think that you should it's not a matter of, I guess the word appetite shouldn't really be an issue. It's, I think what we're doing here and what I think the school department has to do as well is just really show folks that, we're bare bones. We're doing the best we can to try to get everything lean, just as we all are doing in our personal lives, perhaps. And if we are able to demonstrate that, then my experience in this town, as a matter of fact, is that folks vote for an increase when they feel, it's been vetted and that it is clear to them that everything has been done outside of that. So really, the word appetite has nothing to do with it. It's just purely a sense of folks being able to see that all departments are doing their best to try to minimize increases in order to ultimately get the town's vote, our residents, to vote for whatever the scenario is, right? It's certainly not up to us. So,
yeah, I'll agree with what you just said. Totally. We need to demonstrate that we're being fiscally responsible with people's tax payments. I absolutely, totally agree with you. And that may mean some reductions. I want to be, somewhat protective though of staff and service levels. So, when I talk to people in town, nobody wants to pay more taxes, but nobody wants to see, teachers being laid off and, or whatever. I don't want to paint any scenarios that are not real, so I won't do that. But, that's, so I agree with what you're saying. There's definitely a demonstration that we have done everything possible to, keep taxes as reasonable as possible, and not be asking for additional taxes until it's absolutely necessary. So I totally agree with that.
Yeah. let's get rid of this slide for a second, because we've been looking at it for a long time. Could you go back to the kind of the budget summary for me? And you guys have touched on it, but I think, and Evan put it in his the one with, kind of lists the municipal, there you go. The operating budget. So, and Evan said this is early in the process. So I think we're on step 5 and we're talking about, with that last slide, step 42, right? So we have a ways to go, which Evan mentioned, which is good, and it's going to evolve and change. And I think we owe it to the taxpayers. We passed 2 overrides. We've given the town side and the school side, a lot of additional funds up above and beyond the normal increase yearly. And what have we done with those funds? And have we done any planning to avoid, a third override? I think that's a legitimate question. And I think before we even talk about that last slide, I think both sides, Evan's the municipal side, and I think the school side has to really go line item by line item and see what the budget is, what the actuals have been, and where they can save some money, and do a really fair, legitimate, thorough, accurate assessment of what we're spending and what we need and what we can sacrifice to give up to get that 1.7 number delta down. And if we go through that work and that exercise, then we need to see where we are, where Jay is saying, I can't cut anymore, and Evan's saying, I can't cut anymore. We want to you guys' point about, level services. We don't want to give up services. We may have to give up a few, but maybe it's things that we can live without. So I think that exercise, and it's going to take some work, we have to go through. And it's, there's fixed costs and then there's variable costs, right? Some of the fixed costs, like the health insurance, I'm just looking at that. So the town side, because most of this is the town side, right?
Everything, but there's 2 lines that are school related, so public schools and BVT.
Right. So if you take out the insurance, the health insurance, which is a big part of it, because that's both town and school, and most of that is school just because that's where most of the employees live. If you take that out, how much is the town side's operating budget going up? Can you do that?
I did not calculate that yet. Essentially, if you
I've
look,
calculated it.
oh,
Of course you do.
It's roughly 100,000 for the general fund.
600. Okay, so that's the increase in operating costs. 613,000. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
That's minus all the unclassifieds. The health insurance,
Right.
the Worcester Regional.
Right. Okay. And then the school side is going up. What's the increase that's asked for in that
It's
side?
3 million,
3 million. Okay.
$49,991.
All right. So that's a big number. So I think we just have to, that's where we're starting. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. And like I said, if we're going to this board even consider talking about an override, I think until that's done, and you said you were building, alternate budgets, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to see what those look like, and see what it is, see where we are when that's over. That's my opinion. Because the overrides aren't sustainable either, and we have to prepare for a scenario where if we go in saying, hey, we don't want to cut anything, we're not going to cut budgets, both sides are going to get what they requested, and then we go and we don't get the override, because most overrides don't pass. We've been very fortunate, right? And maybe the people after 2, they're like, what are you guys doing? You can't get your costs under control. How come you keep asking for more money? What are we going to do if we don't get that, right? So we have to be prepared for that scenario as well.
Well, you guys will have those budgets, right?
what's that?
You'll have 2 budgets.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. You have
So
a
we'll
regular.
know
and
exactly
contingent.
what'll happen if we don't.
Yeah.
you know,
I mean,
if there's an override
Ye-
option.
Yeah, I will say, till I'm blue in the face and has nothing to do with the school department. I'm only speaking to the budget that I create. But of that $600,000, I think 500,000 of that is built-in costs that we don't control, right? So they're staffing increase, contracts, salary implications, things like that. Because we had our department heads level fund everything. And so you'll see that when you look through the lines, a lot of times you'll see, they increased by 2,500, but the 2,500 came out of somewhere else in their budget. They were very good about adhering to that level funded approach.
So that 600,000 that so that if you take out the health insurance,
right?
So it's about a 2% increase. Is that fair?
It's probably just a little north of that. It's probably close to the 2.5 is
Okay,
where we end up. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
Is that what that says there? Okay.
No, that's just my selfish line.
All right. So
Because I always, unclassifieds live in general government, but it's not.
So 2.5% is a pretty,
We're pretty lean.
Yeah, it's pretty
and I'm
lean.
not saying that we're not going to come back to you with cuts and we're not going to show you what that looks like. We most certainly are. But I do just feel like I should advocate for the town side and the staff. We're pretty lean.
Yeah.
I think our staff does a really good job of being respectful of taxpayer funding. And again, just to put out the caveat, I'm in no way, shape, or form saying that the school department isn't. I'm only speaking to the side of the budget that I actually get to go in and change numbers on. Good? Do we go into capital?
Yeah, let's go into capital.
Okay, on to capital. All right, so capital looks a little bit different than it did last year, and that's because I've been wanting to do capital this way for a long time, and we haven't been able to do it. So this, yes, it says $4.37 million. Not all of that is capital stabilization or free cash. There's a borrowing component and there's some CPC contingent component, and that's really how you should build your capital plan. Your capital plan should have everything you need and then segregate it out via why did I just lose my train of thought? Funding source. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I said to myself. So the other caveat before we move on, I got a lot of caveats tonight. So you'll see that the public schools right now are $540,000 in funding of capital, and that looks definitely like an outlier compared to what we've been doing, which is between 800,000 and $1 million. However, I just want to remind everyone that the schools did get $600,000 of mid-year funding for a roof project and something else.
Boiler?
What's that?
Boiler?
ARPA, a lot of ARPA money.
Well, they got a lot of ARPA money, but no, this is general fund money. Mary, what was the second thing?
The fire alarm.
Fire alarm. Thank you. Yeah. And so Jay and I, we've been in communication about that since they came and asked for assistance finding the funding for the roof. So
Do you have a breakdown of the funding sources?
I do. It's going to be the next slide.
Figured.
Okay.
All right.
Right on it. So what you'll see is of that 4.37 million, 1.4 million of that is borrowing. This is for a fire engine. It's engine 2, probably. Not real good with their engine numbers, but I'm pretty sure this one is 2. And the reason that we are looking to do an authorization to borrow now is that it's projected at being a 48-month delivery. And this truck is showing significant signs of wear. So if you do go into the capital plan and click your link to that truck, you can see there's probably 10 to 15 pictures that the fire department has taken of the status of that truck. So, and I'm sure Chief will be in to talk about that a little bit more in depth. Capital stabilization, we're using just over $1 million, so $1,066,000. And CPC money, 278,000 is what we would apply for. And then free cash is 1.6 million. So it does put us up around the $2.6 million as it sits right now. And that is pretty consistent with where we've been the last several fiscal years. So I don't want that 4.3 to scare you, because it's not all just money we're taking out of the kitty. Some of it's the future kitty. So these are the overarching projects, and I'll just kind of go through them line by line quickly. Switching stadium lights to LED, it's a school project. Roof repairs, they have requested $200,000 globally to just do various repairs at multiple roofs sites. I will digress for just a second and say that William has contracted a company to do roof inspections on all municipal buildings, including the schools. And we are currently wrapping up a grant. We got a $10,000 grant to do thermal inspections of the roofs. And you're doing one school and one municipal building?
We're doing the middle school and North Street Elementary.
Okay,
The
so
two
both-
oldest roofs.
Both of them schools. So we're going to go and do thermals of those. All right, sorry, back to this. Metal roof replacement, $80,000. I'm recognizing now that the location tab did not carry over when I made this PowerPoint, so I will update that so that everybody knows where these are. Replace a water heater, $40,000, and a new fire panel. That's at the middle school. I do know that because I've been involved in that. That's about $60,000. The cemetery department, DPW has requested a new storage building on one of their facilities. It's just not a glamorous Butler building, but it gets their equipment indoors, which we think will really help with the longevity and also give the folks a place to do a little bit more work in-house. The next one I'm very reticent to put on here, but it needs to happen. So the Honeywell software that drives this municipal center, all the heating and cooling is done by a system that is well over a decade old. We are having a lot of failures that we are not able to track down to actual hardware problems, and so they're likely because we're running the outdated software. We are also running that software on a Windows 2008 server because it won't run on anything more modern than Windows 2008. And so we have that replicated in another server. I won't go too far down that rabbit hole. Long story short, there's really no other option than to stay with Honeywell's proprietary software, and the upgrade from level 4 or software version 400 that we're at to the 7 and change that we need to get to is about $80,000 just to upgrade the software. But I think the town's put it off long enough, and I think we're getting to a tipping point where we're going to start seeing zones without heat and cooling and just be really stuck. The last thing I'll say about that is I also think we'll eat through that $80,000 in the next couple of years just in service calls that we can't do in-house because our software is not letting them remote into the system anymore. Okay. PD, it's a UPS, uninterruptible power supply, $25,000. It's a very big UPS that powers the entire police department and our 911 system. Currently, we have this electronic information sign for fire headquarters at $20,000. The chief wants to put a small sign out that he can change information for whatever's going on with fire, whether that's fire weather or no open burning, whatever that is. The chief is looking for 2 sheds, presumably for storage, and Fire Station 3 upgrades. If you recall, for 4 years we've been doing these upgrade projects. We did $100,000 twice for Station 2, so for $200,000. And then we did $100,000 for Station 3 last year, and this will complete Station 3, pretty close to complete Station 3 at $100,000. Go ahead. All right, other improvements. A whole bunch of planning board stuff. So we have I don't know if any of you have ever visited our archive room. It is both neat and also like a labyrinth. I don't know how anybody knows where anything is. It's probably 25 years of people putting stuff in there in a way that makes sense to them.
Where is it?
So it's the old locker room down the hallway, down the end of that hall. If you, my favorite is you go into where the building records are, and it's the old shower. Just all the plumbing sticking out of it, but all the tiles still the same. So we do need to upgrade a little bit of our storage so that we can actually have usable historic records.
Well, if it's a fire, it's not going to burn because it's
No, it's
all masonry.
It's all masonry, the whole thing. We also have some continued funding for open space and rec, housing production plan, hazard mitigation plan, and MVP 2.0, which is for some reason $0, which means that it's actually in another fiscal year, and I got to take that out of there. So, anyways, long story short, a lot of planning stuff in there. Lastly, this is important to note: Ferry Street playground replacement and pour in place surfacing for ADA accessibility. So that's a $378,000 park improvement project. $278 we would plan on applying to CPC to see if they'll fund it, with $100,000 coming out of the capital fund. Because as we've discussed with CPC on a number of occasions, it's great when we can draw from different funding sources and try to work collaboratively. Next slide, please, Will. All right, we need a new 1-ton dump in cemetery, which shockingly, 1-ton dumps with a plow are $130,000 now. We need to replace a 6-wheel dump, which is a catch basin cleaner with something similar. So we have a truck that, and I will toot the highway department's and DPW department's horn here a little bit. They're dry. I don't know how old the truck is. I can pull it up, but it's a very old truck that they rebuilt right down to the frame. It's an old clamshell that they use to clean all the basins. They did save you, the taxpayers, a ton of money doing all of that, but it is time for that truck to retire.
Oh, I have just, I know that truck, and have we talked to, I know the town of Northbridge has a Vector truck.
Yep.
And they're probably, I used to work for a company that sold those. We were the dealer for them, and now I can't imagine they got probably, they're over $1 million, I would say.
Yeah, big money.
So, but that's really the correct way to do it, and it's a much better process. Have we talked about maybe renting that truck? Because I'm sure it's a piece of equipment that you don't use all the time.
No, so so yes, we haven't talked about renting that particular truck.
Subbing it out,
Right.
having them
Yep,
come and charge
I
us
did.
an hourly rate.
Yes, we talked about that when I first got here. And there's some, we'll call it pushback for lack of a better term, of doing it that way. I won't speak to all the pros and cons. It's not my huge area of expertise. We can certainly get some commentary on that. The clamshell that we have now, they use pretty much all summer. There's one guy, Jimmy Brown, who just drives that truck all summer, cleaning out catch basins, and then doing all of the associated reporting for our MS4 stormwater compliance. I'm not saying you can't sub that out. Towns do it all the time. But why don't I make that a talking point with DPW, and when we go over their section of the budget, that's something we can talk about.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to take Jimmy's job away from him, but there's certainly other things that he can be doing. Where's the pushback coming from? Is it coming from Grafton?
Yeah, it just vac trucks are, you absolutely sub them out. My conversation was more about why don't we have a vac truck? We're doing a ton of basins. And there's an inherent downside to a vac truck is that they're maintenance heavy. They do have a fairly high failure rate, which repairs cost a lot of money. So I don't know if there's reticence there.
They've been around for a long time now. I mean,
Yeah.
I was working for that dealership. It was 20 years ago, and
Yeah.
we were selling them then, and they were a pretty popular unit for for a town or city to buy. But like I said, Northbridge has one. They've invested in one. If we can rent that thing out for a couple $100 an hour, it might even be less than that, but it might be worth at least, in lieu of spending because $400,000 on a unit, and that would give our guys
Yep.
it would give Paul another set of hands.
Yes. There is thank you for saying, this particular unit. So the only other caveat I will give, and when DPW comes in to talk this through, we'll drill down on this, but there is potential that they wouldn't replace it with a 6-wheel. They would actually just go down to a 1-ton, which would save us a considerable amount of money. So it'd be a 1-ton with a clamshell. It's still not a vac truck. But when they come in, they can speak to why they would favor one over the other, kind of why they're heading in that direction.
Well, basically you're mounting a crane on it.
Yeah, that's all
you
it
know?
is.
So
Yep.
so the vehicle is got to be heavy enough to be able to
Yeah.
to operate. Maybe a 1-ton is. We had service trucks that had cranes, but the 1-tons were light. I mean, we were
Yeah.
picking up,
Or I should say probably it'd be a 550, but it would still be that same chassis, right?
Yeah, we had 550 service trucks that had a crane on them, and they had limited
Yep.
lifting capacity because you can't put a crane on it. The crane has to match the chassis, and,
Right.
and the cranes couldn't be that big because the chassis couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
So, and if you get what was happening too is if you get something that's too light for the job, you're going to break the truck.
Mhm.
So, not saying a 1-ton wouldn't work. I'm just saying that's the longevity of
Yeah.
that truck is going to be shortened considerably by an undersized vehicle.
Yes.
So, it's probably not that much more for a 6-wheeler, and they probably got enough 1-tons running around. They might want that for other stuff other than just
Yeah.
that. But I would just revisit the
Yeah, sure.
the Vactor thing, and if we can just pay them to come and do it, and nobody's getting laid off, everybody's working. I mean, the guys shouldn't have a problem with that. So.
Yeah. All right. We will dig deeper on that. Replace engine 1. This is just a payment in that process. We already have engine 1. There is replace the existing spare wheel dump truck with a new truck. That's another 6-wheeler for $360,000. The cruisers, $140,000 for 2 cruisers in there now. And then replace engine 2 is the other thing that is in this plan that is not funded by your normal channel. So that would be what we would go out to get an authorization to borrow on. Knowing full well that you probably aren't going to borrow that money for 48 months, right? But you need to have town meeting authorization to be able to enter the contract and get in the queue. That old chestnut. All right. Other equipment. So the chief and I have been working on a flock camera project. Flock cameras are license plate readers. They are either popular or loathed, depending on what you do.
I don't like it.
I think so. The results that these cameras have had throughout the Commonwealth are amazing. In my hometown, just the other day, we got 2 gentlemen that came up from New York City that have been doing just B&Es all over the place, and their plate got tagged, and they got them in the local Walgreens. It was a good one. So.
Does that also include if you're doing like a 40 and a 25?
Nope. We don't do any of that.
Good.
So this system, no, because I got places to go. No, this system, as we've built it, the chief primarily, but I'm very interested in this technology. There's no stoplight cameras, there's no speeding cameras, there's no any of that stuff. It's all at points of entry into Grafton. So when you get a bolo out of Millbury or Worcester, the computer tells you whether that car's come across that line or not, right? It lets us use our resources more effectively. You get an Amber Alert, you get any of those things.
New York.
This is the technology that everybody's using. And in fact, you probably drive by them every day, multiple times a day, and you don't even know that they're there. One place that they're most obvious that I've seen is when you go to the shops in Millbury. As soon as you come up that hill by Guitar Center, there's about 8 of them sitting there, getting every single lane both directions. How many people drive by that a day that don't even know that they exist, right? I'm particularly keen on, abductions, Amber Alerts,
Oh, yeah.
all of those things where we get a bolo from another community saying we're looking for a white Honda Accord coming out of Worcester, and our officers will go post up somewhere, but if it doesn't go by them right there, they don't know it, or they're on another call.
How does that work?
The flock cameras?
Yeah.
So it's essentially taking a snapshot picture every time a car goes by, and it automatically just tags it. So
So it would know it's that white Honda?
color, make, model, you can do it by a number of different things.
That is slick.
And we were just doing some of our regional dispatch stuff, and there is some tie-in to those things too, where you have other communities that are contributing. So I think I was talking to the chief again in Munson, because that's where I am, and I'm trying to make sure I don't get jammed up on my way to work.
There's one road that goes into Munson.
That's right.
Route 32.
It's got one. It's got a camera on it. I saw it the
Of
other
course
day.
it does, yeah.
But
So they had to buy one.
yeah, right. They have 4 now. No, but they're talking to the chief. I think Munson's linked up with like 50 other communities that, as long they doesn't matter where they are, they tag it in there. So you don't have to have heard the bolo out of Framingham, right? Because it's not going to hit you there or whatever that is. But all of a sudden, your computer in the car dings and says, this car they're looking for an abduction in Framingham just crossed the border into Grafton. Right now we can pinpoint it. So is there, is there a loss of privacy to a certain extent? There is. Absolutely. There is with every camera, but you're probably on camera all day anyways.
Mm-hmm.
So I know we are. Right.
I can't
Well,
Right now.
Yeah, that ended a long time ago.
Yeah. Anyways, that's a pet project that is near and dear to my heart, and I think Chief Minardi as well. So, moving on, another payment for our taser program. So if you remember, we went into this taser leasing program rather than buying them. It's more economical for us in the long run. Suppressed patrol rifles for the police department. So every cruiser has a patrol rifle in it. They are extremely loud, and the new thing, the way to go, is to get suppressed rifles that help with hearing loss over time. You get one incident where you need to use that, and you could do some real damage to your ears. And Chief will go probably more into depth on that. And also Knox security key apparatus mounts. I believe that is, every building that we need to get into in the town of Grafton for the fire department has a Knox box. That is a security key apparatus mount, is exactly what it says. It keeps the key in the same location in every truck so that everybody knows how to get that key and gets us into the sites faster. Keep going. Okay, this is new. And this is, we'll call it, if it's good, it's Mary's brainchild, and if it's bad, I'll take the heat for it. So we have been doing a ton of work, as you know, as we just discussed on OPEB. So we just got our last audit, and came up with a funding scheme that if we can stick to, by the time we get to full funding, and Hamden, no, we're not in Hamden County anymore. Worcester County's paid off. We'll save the taxpayers $20 million if we follow this plan. And so part of that plan is earmarking a certain amount of money, bless you, at each fiscal year, and it goes up significantly. But not significantly, it goes up over time. And Mary's doing hand signals. I'm not good at that, Mary.
3% every year it will go up.
There you
annually.
go. 3% every year. And Mary, you calculated that we would spend about $4 million out of our general coffers, which then comes back to us in the form of an additional $20 million of savings.
Correct.
Where does this money live? I mean,
In our OPEB trust account.
it's an interest-bearing account.
Oh yeah, we're killing it right now.
Good.
Yeah, we've been. I will say that I will toot Mary and my horn on. We've been very aggressive with trying to get policies in place and invest wisely, and it's really, pardon the pun, paying dividends. Yeah, teeing that one up.
See what I mean?
But yeah, right, nerdy financial stuff. But really, because we're up to $750,000 now, and a good chunk of that has been because of our recent investments, because we couldn't invest it until we hit $500,000. So, you know, we're really cruising there, and you know, it's important. It's a big nut that we save that, you know, nobody cares about, but you will when all that money gets freed up in the operating budget in 2042, Mary?
Yeah, so basically what it is other post-employee benefits, and that is all of your future funding for all of your retirees, and for their health insurance. So they do, you know, we have to have an OPEB audit done, completed every year, and they calculate our liability from year to year. And I believe we're 65 or 67 million. They just completed it. So if we approve, because it will be a new funding OPEB policy, you know, so once we approve that and we start this, we will save $20 million for the town of Grafton residents.
Where does that 20 million come from?
It's from us investing today. Each year we're investing, and it goes into the trust fund where they, you know, the actuarials, they estimate how much revenue we're going to get. They estimate the future expenses. So they, our consultant, Stone Consultant, who does the OPEB audit for us, Evan and I asked them to do a funding study for us. And so what they did was they looked at what we were contributing currently, which is 0.025% of our payroll, and that is not making an impact. This will make an impact with a reduced liability of $20 million by year 2035, when Worcester Regional Retirement System is fully funded.
Got it. I bet it at some point, when you combine it with home values and, you know, overall asset values in Grafton, probably would contribute to the bond rating increase. I'm probably not close to that at this point because of the values in town, but we'll get there. And it'd be nice to have this as like not anything that will ever hold us back in terms of that next bond rating, which would save lots in borrowing costs. So interesting.
Yeah, that's our goal, to increase our rating.
Yeah, love it.
I have a question.
Sure.
So either to Mary and or Evan. So just to clarify, so currently we are at 0.025% of payroll. We'd be increasing or committing to increasing to 3% yearly.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay. And then the savings is, there were two numbers thrown out, like 2042 versus 2035.
Yeah. So one is, go ahead, Mary, if you want to explain.
It's the funding of it. So in 2035, Worcester Regional becomes fully insured. And so then the mechanisms on which and how we pay things, it shouldn't be coming out of the general fund. Once we're fully invested, it will come out of the trust fund. So we'll be appropriating money into the trust fund, and the money will be coming out of the trust fund.
It's I mean, Mary and I are simplifying a like 25-page document of actuarial. So I'm more than happy, as Mark will tell you, to go more into detail on OPEB. But essentially, what happens when we hit 2035, you know, when Worcester County is fully funded, it changes the mechanism that we're paying, right, Mary, as you just said.
Yes.
And so it shifts where we're paying from. But if we get ahead of that with this funding mechanism that we're talking about today, when we get to the tipping point of the 2035s, and then there's another break point at 2042, that's when when I only tongue in cheek say nobody cares about it because it's hypothetical money that you're not going to spend. So it's really hard to show people that we saved you $20 million. Just trust us on that. But when you look at the numbers and you look at that full run of actuarials on that account, that's essentially what the town of Grafton will not have to come up with in the 2040s, whether it's 2042 or 2044 for the final piece there. But
Okay, great. Thank you for that.
sure.
I'll take you up on that.
Okay.
How long would that take to go through that? An hour or two? In a,
No, we could do that in half an hour.
Can you just send out the 25-page thing?
We'll give you all of it.
That's
Yeah.
what I'm after. Thanks.
Yeah. But if you want to, you're always welcome to come sit in the office with Mary and I, and we'll put it on the screen. And
Do we get bad jokes?
we get, yeah. This is nothing what I do in here.
you should see it.
Yeah.
It's actually pretty interesting, but it does underscore the fact that we have people that are qualified and capable, scrutinizing and working hard to try to do the right thing for the town. And this is one of those things. I don't know enough about it. I'd like to learn more so I can represent it and also learn because I'm curious. And I also do like watching the two of you back and forth. It isn't just like jokes too. It can be a little bit of constructive, debate in a respectful way.
Yeah. 10 years this year, Mary and I
Yeah.
together as a finance director, town administrator duo.
Oof. All right.
Yeah.
There's no incremental benefit throughout that. Between now and 2035, it's once we hit that mark, then we start to see return.
Yeah.
But
Up until then, it's really
yeah,
just grin and bear it type of stuff. The actuary did say something that I found particularly interesting, which is that at our current funding mechanism or our funding plan at 0.025%, as much as Mary and I like to see that number and watch it grow, it makes almost zero impact by the time you get to the end. And so she was essentially saying it might not even be worth you even putting any money into it until you get to 2035 and then start taking what you would pay to Worcester County and just move that money right over into your OPEB trust. But again, the downside of doing it that way is about $20 million. Okay. Well, that's all I got about that.
That's enough.
Yeah, that's all I've been doing for days.
Well, I appreciate the work you guys have put into this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mary.
Thank you, Mary.
And you do still have a hand on Zoom.
yeah. Why don't you welcome him in, Mr. Prisby? Can you hear us?
I can.
Welcome aboard.
Yeah, thanks. So I want to start with the $300,000 for OPEB. Guys, listen. As much as I'm enthusiastic about investing in that, and I am, it's the right thing to do. I would be remiss if I didn't say in recorded television that 10 years ago, while Craig was on the board and I was finance committee chair, I know Anne Marie, you're rolling your eyes. We recommended more investment in OPEB. And now here we are, and it's $300,000 that we're having to spend to save millions of dollars down the road, and it's a great investment. However, we're facing a $1.7 million, is it $1.7 million operational deficit? Someone correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
Currently.
Okay. So $1.7 million off of $70 million. And I've been here a couple different times, and I need it to be taken seriously. And frankly, I don't think it has been this evening. And if I'm being candid, I don't think it has been over the course of the past couple of years. We knew this was coming. And if one of you could name one single thing you did to avoid this evening, I'd be appreciative. I hadn't seen anything. We've hired more staff. We've hired more police officers. We've hired more teachers. And we know full well that 80% of our expenditures are personnel. And yet, from my view, we've said yes to every single request that we've had down the line. And Mark, while you might be keen to learn things, I would suggest to you that you've been on the board for about a year and a half now, almost 2 years. You should have learned by now. So I'm wondering, what staff positions and what services would you cut to make the budget balance? Craig, what educational services would you cut? Because that's always where you go to make the budget balance. This is ultimately up to you guys whether or not you pass an override. And frankly, I'm alarmed to hear people suggest that going to one-time funds like free cash as a way to balance a budget is even an option. Because each and every one of you know that that is a red flag for a community. That is a failing financial community that goes to one-time funds to pay for ongoing expenses. And I'll be curious to see what FinCom says, because that was my retort when I was a chair of the Finance Committee and I was the chair of the Select Board, that you do not use one-time funds to balance a budget. So you guys have your work cut out before you. Tell us what you'd cut. Tell us how you would do it in specific terms, because you've all had more than enough time to see this coming. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Frisbee.
I have no idea even how to answer that. So, because there was so much there, and we don't build a budget. We have professional staff to build that budget, and that's what they're going to do, Ed. And they're at the infancy stage here, and they're going to come up with some different scenarios, and we're going to work through it, just like we have for years. The Finance Committee will look at it, this board will look at it, the school committee will look at it, and we got to figure it out. And that's what we go through every time we go through a budget cycle. So to ask Mark or me or anybody else that you may want to point out, to ask them what we're going to cut, we're going to take recommendations from staff, we're going to ask questions, and we're going to have to get there because we have to, as you know, present a balanced budget at town meeting. So whatever that's going to take to do, we're going to have to do that. That's just part of this volunteer public service job that we do. Do you have any other questions?
I think he's gone. Yeah. We demoted him back to the audience one way or the other.
His hand, pardon me, his hand is still up, so I can re-allow him if.
I think I'd rather keep us away from some of the in the weeds back and forth at this time, because we are looking at the budget from kind of a higher perspective at this point, and it's not as close to finalized as where I feel like this discussion could head. So,
well, it's just negative, it's accusatory, it's, you know, it's inappropriate, and it's what he does to every board that he decides that he wants to call in on any given night.
As is his right.
Well, it may be his right, but it's disrespectful. And, you know, we're all here doing the work, and he feels like he's going to call in and he's going to call people out and he's going to try and put them on the spot in what he feels is a clever way. And it's inappropriate, and it's certainly not appreciated by me. So it's hard to respect somebody that calls in and, you know, and approaches a committee in that way. Like, how are we supposed to respond to that? We supposed to respond in a respectful way? That's how I'm going to respond, because that's who I am. But it's not appreciative, it's not constructive, and it's got no business or place in this meeting. Let's just say that.
All right. Ms. Roy, would you like the opportunity to speak?
Colleen Roy, and this is kind of probably directed through the board to Evan. When you present this to FinCom, can you do a scenario 2.5 where it is a combination of like 500K in reductions, maybe 500K in one-time money, and a reduced override, so that can be more of the conversation?
Yeah, certainly. And I think that's the point of creating scenarios that use one-time funds or overrides or major cuts are to give the residents that are on these boards snapshots into what this looks like.
Right.
It doesn't mean that it's the way that it goes or the way it should go, or, you know, whether it's a red flag or not. I agree. It's not what a healthy community does to try to balance the budget. But it does need to be discussed, and people do need to know what the options are, and they need to know the pros and cons of those things. And so that's what I feel my job is, and Mary's job is to put those before you. So I guess the short answer is yes. What the intent of tonight's presentation was is to start talking about things at like a 10,000 foot overview to get general ideas of what people think, and then we'll key in on those. But yeah, I would think that if we do any of that, it's going to be a mixture of 1 and 2 or just 2. You know, obviously you'd want to mitigate the use of one-time funds as much as possible.
Right. Okay, thank
But
you.
yes, I'll make sure that we have a 2.5 in there.
No pun intended.
Yeah.
And you do have two hands on Zoom now, Mr. Yeomans and Mr. Persby.
Okay, let's give Mr. Yeomans a chance, please. Mr. Yeomans, can you hear us?
Yes.
We can
I'd
hear
just
you.
like to say how much I appreciated the clarity with which you presented this information tonight and the on-screen clarity along with your verbal interpretations and discussions. I greatly appreciate the effort that's been put into this. And I like seeing the vivid numbers on screen clearly and easily projected. Thank you for your efforts, and I look forward to further discussions that you'll have. And I would suggest that anyone who is interested in having the facts before town meeting start attending the select board meetings remotely and listen to the clarity with which the information is being presented. And thank you, and I'll sign off.
Thank you, Bill.
Mr. Chair, before you move on to the next item, I do want to just note that Mr. Yeomans reached out to me, I think the first year I was here, about the how difficult it is to see on the screen at home, and gave me some suggestions on color combinations and black versus white and all that. And so I thank Bill, because I build all my PowerPoints now with that in mind, and I think that makes for better viewing at home.
Appreciate that. I think they are better generally from an accessibility standpoint and increased contrast.
That's what we're working on.
You know, I had kind of held off on some commentary because I wanted to let you get through some of the capital stuff. You know, we've kind of talked extensively about the use of the word appetite, and you know, I think we're all on the same page with that. I don't, you know, again, nobody ever wishes for an override, but to me, I think, you know, part of our role here is to be advisory. You know, we go through all these exercises and become as well versed in these things as we can, so that we can relay that information to residents and, you know, hopefully help guide them through the process. We have a habit of really squeezing our budgets, you know, to try and make them effective, but you know, so it's conflicting, because I feel like so many times we end up kicking the can on issues, you know, because we deem it won't be detrimental. And I feel like we've had, primarily with some of our municipal capital, or, you know, school capital, however we want to classify it, issues that have happened over the last few years that, you know, have had decent price tags attached to them. And there's a tendency to say that these things happen at the most inopportune time. You know, roof failures, heating failures, general HVAC stuff, the fire panels. But with the kind of frequency with which they happen, it also makes me take a step back and wonder if, because we cut things so close for so long, that maintenance continues to be something that suffers. And again, this is just a personal feeling. Don't really have statistics to back up what type of impact that is. Just to say that, I think it's, as everyone else has seemed to state, it's important that we give residents a proper idea of what types of service reductions and staffing reductions to expect and what those outcomes look like on a budget that fits within the allowable 2.5% increase. Just throwing this out, having watched a couple of school committee discussions, the superintendent noted about a month ago, I think, that at that time they were looking at losing close to 19 positions. Now, at the time, they haven't figured out which particular fields that would be, or how that it was just based on taking the payroll, dividing it out equally, and figuring out how many people that equaled. But 19 people ends up equaling something close to 27 when you account for the unemployment and everything that needs to get paid out in order to just hit that break-even point of where we're initially trying to get to. I felt like the possibility of just losing 30 staff from the school system in this first year seems frightening. So I think we all think, and have discussed that tonight, that putting ramifications to the discussion that we're having is definitely going to help direct not only this board, but the town in general, moving forward on the topic.
Mr. Vice Chair?
Mr. Hoffman.
Yeah, I just wanted to address a couple of things in terms of Mr. Prisby's comments. One is just the hiring. I did make a note early in Evan's tenure about his plan to hire additional police officers. And I questioned that, and I watched the presentation to Finance Committee. I heard his commentary on it, and ultimately, that was his plan all along. And based on what I saw in the budget, the forecast, and the discussion on that, I agreed with his assessment that we needed additional police officers, and you see it in town. You see an increased police presence in town. I like that. And it was something that was much needed, that we held off for a very long time. And the last override that we did had a significant public safety component to it. So we hired additional fire and police with some of those override funds. And I think that was money well spent. As with other overrides, we had a horizon for that it was 4 to 6 years, I think it was proposed in the meetings. And so here we are. I don't think that there is much that could be done along the way necessarily. I get a little frustrated when I hear you guys had so much time. We go through the same budget process every single year, and each line item gets questioned and discussed and approved at town meeting, and so it's not pleasant work to do that every year, and I don't necessarily think that we would be in a vastly different situation than we are today if we were trying to nickel and dime along the way. These increases that we're looking at are contractual increases with union labor, which are deserved and needed so that Grafton can remain competitive. It's health insurance increases that we have little control over. It's retirement benefits that we have little control over. So I think it's a legitimate question that Mr. Prisby brings up. But I don't think we've been asleep at the switch necessarily, just standing by while the override funds get used up as they were planned on being used. It was always for capital stabilization, it was for public safety, and it was for schools, and that's how the money was used. the last override. I'd love to hear anybody, that the alternative to an override is exactly what Mr. Prisby asks. What services are you going to cut? So as I've articulated tonight, I don't want to go there with cutting services. But it's difficult to be called out like that in a way that it's not the select board's sole responsibility to be acting as the sort of, the person who says no to everything. We are trusting our staff. We're trusting our department heads. We're trusting finance committee, who goes through line by line, does interviews with all of the department heads and all that. And there is a whole process. And Mr. Prisby, you'll be very well aware of that because you've been on every single side of that for many years. Yeah, I don't know. But I wanted to talk about that staffing situation specifically because Grafton continues to grow as a town, and it's not realistic to think that we're never going to hire additional positions. We have to, that's just that's the nature of a growing town, is that we need additional staff to cover those services, as well as all the requirements, regulatory requirements and other things that are come along that we don't have control over. So anyways, it's just wanted to mention that. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any closing comments before we switch topics?
No.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mary. Thank you, Evan, for your presentation. It was in-depth, good in-depth discussion. Enjoy the rest of your night, Mary.
Thank you, you too.
Okay. Switching gears to the National Fitness Campaign.
Yeah. If I can cue that up, Andy.
Sure.
I'll try to keep this short, given that we've gone long. There are some slides that, William, if you want to put up, and actually I had them pulled up, but I don't currently. But yeah, we can just you can kind of click through probably. But so basically, this stems from ARPA committee. We came down to the end. We were talking about. I think we talked to the select board about this previously, but talking about mental health and wellness and how we could devote some funds to that respect. Probably the next slide you can hang out there for a hot second. Yeah, thanks.
That's where
So yeah. So there was $50,000 that was devoted to this notion of outdoor exercise equipment. And I believe the select board is aware of this from our previous discussions. And what I've been doing is trying to find, places, different vendors and whatnot, and seeing what we can do. And I recently was made aware of a ribbon cutting in Worcester, and it was by this company that we're looking at right now, or this campaign, I should say. So it's called the National Fitness Campaign. It's a national, as the name implies, a national wellness consulting firm or a national wellness, fitness drive. And what they can do for us is that this is showing this fitness court, which is something that I've been looking at, and Evan has also been, pulled him into a meeting. And so now just looking at you guys in terms of your appetite for something like this. So the National Fitness Campaign essentially helps municipalities with funding. They do offer some grant monies. It seems to be like about a third of the cost or thereabouts. And correct me if I'm off on any of this stuff, Evan. And we wouldn't, so this is kind of demonstrating like the artwork, that things that we could skip, but it was kind of just that notion of this 7-unit exercise area. It involves pouring concrete, so that's kind of an expense. But this is happening in Massachusetts. So there, like I said, there was just a ribbon cutting in Worcester. Milford is doing this in 2025. Towns like Gardner, Leominster, the people at the campaign were able to show us many other municipalities in Massachusetts. The partner here in Massachusetts is Blue Cross Blue Shield. And so they've this national fitness campaign has partnered with BCBS and funding or helping with these match grants. So basically, like, again, long story short, this isn't something that we haven't discussed before because it kind of came through ARPA, but just found this campaign met with them, brought Evan in to meet with them, and just kind of getting a sense of the board if there is still, I don't, I was going to say appetite for, but whatever you want to throw in there for a word. Clearly, I use that. For continuing to pursue this notion of like an outdoor exercise equipment area. What this system looks like is it's just a, kind of a slab. I think it's like 38 by 38 or something. It's 38 by 38. Pardon me, I'm losing my voice, but it's 7 stations, and you go through the 7 stations, a full body workout. They offer support to the town in terms of like there's an app for this. They can train staff, like say at the senior center or maybe recreation. Staff could be trained in doing various, different things with this as well. So I guess I'll leave it at that unless you want me to keep going, given that it's late.
And I can just jump in real quick. So I
Thanks.
think our project looked like it would be around 150,000 ish with a $30,000 grant directly from the fitness campaign, if I remember correctly, and then we can do some in-kind matching with local partners and try to get that cost down. So this did seem like, at least to me, a good candidate for CPC funding, maybe a little bit of capital funding. I did approach Shannon at the senior center, who liked the idea of potentially creating one of these kind of where the tent is now on the municipal center lot over there, the flat part of the hill. Flattish spot. Those were just preliminary conversations. But I sent her the presentation and she was into it. So as a PT, I think she's very keen on getting people moving, and that's part of what they're focused on down there. So I think it's a good opportunity.
And just to piggyback on that, Evan, if I might, the additional resources that this National Fitness Campaign brings is, the knowledge of grants, and Evan was familiar with some of the grants, obviously, they were speaking of, but they're funding this and they're helping towns with obtaining grants. And they indicated like some towns where it was just fully, almost fully funded by grants and whatnot. So if we were to go to the next step, just to preempt any questions, my understanding is that applying for this grant, it's a non-binding process. They only fund a number of them per year because, again, it's finite dollars. I believe they said it was about 10 candidates per year. Any questions or anything else, Evan?
No, I think that covered it. I had Will just kind of stop on this funding match slide. I think it ticks the box of what we're trying to do with the outdoor exercise equipment. It's a low barrier to entry. I think that it would be good for seniors, and then obviously outside of senior usage, it's here at the municipal center. If you're here after hours, which a lot of us are, there's a lot of people up here walking and exercising. So it just seems like a nice addition to that community of folks. And actually, the gentleman that gave us the presentation brought up an app. Why am I blanking on this app now? Doesn't matter.
Yeah, there's an app that folks can use to kind of do this like 7.
Yeah, there was another app that he brought up. Not Activia, but it's like that.
That's
Strava maybe. Anyways, you turn it on and it tracks your movement and it gives you your metrics, right? Like 100 other things. But he was able to pull that up and show the places in Grafton that are like heat mapped as far as where most people are exercising, and the municipal center was high on that list. So it did seem like a pretty good area to try to target. So.
And actually, along with that, they are kind of evaluating us as well because they're looking at putting like $30,000 to $50,000 towards us. So that's one of the things that we talked about is locations that were central, that would be, that would make sense. So we're not going to put it, they're not going to have an appetite to it being like out on Flat Street, for example. So we, like Evan said, they were able to kind of pull up these maps to show like, oh yeah, that would be a great site versus in terms of accessibility, number of people that might be walking by, etc. So we also have to not sell ourselves, but they're assessing us as well as a community for this.
Absolutely. Let's do it, team.
And it's always like a 7-station setup.
There's two.
Okay.
If I could, Emery. So one is bigger and has more. We really targeted the 7, I think, in part of our conversation, mainly because of the footprint and the cost.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
the larger footprint, instead of 38 by 38 is whatever, twice 38 by 38 is. And it has more of kind of like a free area for more structured classes that would be taught by somebody. The one that Anne-Marie had pointed to earlier here, the 7-station, is a lot, in my opinion, it seems a lot more of the self-guided side as well. So, you know, it's a static piece of equipment that gets put in, and you can, you know, show up and either take a class with somebody that we have trained to do that, or follow the app and it'll show you how to navigate the circuit and get some exercise.
Yeah, there's two options if I can interject. So one, the fitness court studio, I think it's called. It's got studio in there. It's kind of a 2-sided thing. There was a frame. You don't have to pull it up though again, Will. So the one side is the 7 exercise circuit, and then the other side of kind of a wall is more of a, you know, could be an exercise class or a dance class, kind of just a poured thing. And that was 38 by 73 feet was the imprint for that. But additionally, the cost was over $100,000 more. So I was right away just going for most cost effective, you know, smaller footprint, which brings down, you know, the cost of concrete and all that other stuff. So yeah, that's this fitness court studio. This one also shows where they have, you know, you can, I guess in Milford, they're doing an elaborate, they have an artist, a local artist that's coming in and doing a mural on there. But again, that wouldn't be something that I was looking at factoring in, because that's an additional cost as well. So it's just kind of getting this fitness court, they which is on the right side of that, what you're looking at. It's this, you know, kind of multi-generational use is the way they talked about it. It's a 7-minute, 7 exercise circuit.
Yeah, the only other question I had was where we were considering putting that, and I mean, provided the seniors are okay with losing that tented area for, you know, or we could relocate that, you know, whatever the situation may be, I guess. It does seem like a valuable spot, because and there are lots of people who walk up here, walk the track at the high school, you know, partake in the school fields. It does seem like a good centralized location that would be well utilized.
Yeah, and my conversation with Shannon was not to do away with the tent, but relocate the tent kind of in that same area, but with a different footprint. Because it is used, but it is not used very much. And as I learned last week, mainly that's due to the bees, which I've never heard of before. So I think that's something we could take care of and get better usage. But yeah, apparently it's a bee haven. All right. So I think Anne-Marie and I were just looking for, you know, is this something that the board is interested in, and should we pursue, you know, in a general concept kind of way?
I'm definitely in favor of it.
Okay. Sure. All right, let's do it, Anne-Marie. Everybody's nodding. It's like everybody's tired, but yes. He's burnt.
Like when I did the plastic bag ban, it was the very last thing at town meeting. Everyone was gone or asleep.
Yeah, don't show them this meeting to gauge our level of excitement.
It's when you get things passed at the end of the night.
Yep. All right,
The plastic bag.
Oh, sorry. This is Andy's. Here's the chair.
But you don't need any action. Everybody.
No,
agrees,
we're
like,
good.
gonna move
Yeah,
forward,
no.
so.
As long as everybody's like, yeah, that's a cool idea, then we'll head in that direction.
Hey, I mean, that's a cool idea.
That's a cool idea.
Yeah.
Thanks. Okay.
All right.
Anne-Marie brought that in. I was really excited to see it though. It's really cool.
Thank you, Miss Foley. Moving on. First right of refusal, 40B resale at 23 Buttercup Lane. We've gone through a handful of these recently. I'm anticipating that nobody on the board has questions, and we could go right to a motion for this.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Alamo.
I move the board vote to not purchase the home at 23 Buttercup Lane for the maximum resale price of $222,400.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Alamo.
Alamo, aye.
Ms. Dauphinay.
Dauphinay, aye.
Jefferson, aye. Mr. Hoffman.
Often aye.
Ms. Foley.
Foley, aye.
Okay. Motion passes 5-0. Up next, vote to consider to accept the deeds for 179 and 183 Upton Street.
These are the remaining properties of Silver Lake.
Yep.
Take a motion.
Sure.
I move the board vote to accept the deed for 179 and 183 Upton Street and move and approve acquisition of parcels as authorized by the passage of Article 10 of the October 21, 2024 town meeting warrant.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Mr. Alamo.
Alamo, aye.
Mrs. Dauphiné.
Dauphiné, aye.
Jefferson, aye. Mr. Hoffman.
Often aye.
Ms. Foley.
Foley, aye.
Motion passes. 5-0. Select board reports. Anybody?
Pass.
I'm just going to note that last Thursday, the 16th, was Cindy Ide's birthday.
Oh, yeah.
She's a lovely person. She works very hard for this town and this board. Happiest of birthdays, Cindy.
Happy birthday.
I won't say it.
Oh.
No, happy birthday, Cindy. She was on vacation, right?
She was.
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
TA report.
No.
You spoke enough tonight?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. I did. I may regret this. I did want to ask you guys if you could elaborate. I saw a post today about heating maintenance issues in the program and community rooms at the library. Any additional information about that?
Can I sum it up?
Please.
So we have continued problems with the compressors in that building. They have a very short lifespan, and so we just keep running up against them and replacing them under warranty, and we're trying to navigate with Tom and the Board of Trustees a better solution, but much like this building, we're tied to the system that's installed in there, so we're working on it. Yeah?
It was way more professional than what I was gonna say. Good job.
Yeah, it's broke.
That's what I was gonna say.
No, yeah.
All right. Correspondence. Any comments, questions, anything anyone wants to discuss?
It doesn't include your note to us, does it? Correspondence
Which note?
about the accident this week. Last week.
I don't know if it's in this one or the next one, but you're certainly free to bring it up and it can apply.
There's correspondence in this relative to Evan's letter appraising our
Okay.
departments, if that's what you're alluding to, Mark.
Yes.
That one's in
Yeah.
Yep. So I'd like to make a comment on that, just reiterating a little bit of what I said earlier to Chief Minardi, Chief Matthew, Paul Canoyer, and Kevin Gallagher. Just, I don't know what it's like to do that kind of stuff. That's not my work, but just the courage and the and the commitment to helping people save lives and just pull people out of wrecks like that deserves, I think, public commendation. Just wanted to say, I guess, express gratitude just on behalf of myself to those four folks and the other people that are part of it as well. And thanks for sending that note to all of us and letting us know, Evan.
Yeah, I was impressed with how quickly that the traffic detail came together. So I was bringing Cooper to BBT. We got there I think there was the first police car had just gotten there. By the time I got to BBT, because it's pretty quick to get around that part of 140, by the time I dropped him off and came back, there was at least 3 different departments that were involved. DPW, police, fire, everybody seemed to be there. There was a dude from Upton Police that came, so... And everything was perfectly organized.
Yep.
No questions about it. There were signs up and flags and cones, and it was amazing how quickly it all came together. So for something that's sort of, totally random, unexpected, for everything to be so well coordinated and just put together so quickly, I was really impressed with it. Yeah, it's good stuff.
Just one thing, Evan, will we get a kind of a report on the mill fire as well? Once they do some type of an assessment, I don't know if that's been done yet as far as...
Yeah, they're doing an after action tonight, I think. It's either tonight or tomorrow night. We can certainly request that from the chief.
Yeah, it'd just be nice to know where that building stands moving forward and
Yeah.
what's left of it.
Yeah, I think the sprinklers contained it pretty well from what I was able to discuss with Deputy Chief today. So, but we can get a little more formal update on that from the chief for sure.
Okay.
Just quickly echoing the sentiments that have been said, I think it's worth highlighting too that we've transitioned to new chiefs at both the police department and the fire department recently. Over the last few years, I should say, and the fact that these situations continue to run as seamlessly as they do is, thanks in large part to the work that all these department members put in, and the practice and the in-session training. As Evan noted in his correspondence, it's not by accident. They put in the work and the practice, and that's why things go as smoothly as they do. So, echoing the word of thanks to everybody involved in that. Resignations.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Alamo.
I move the board vote to acknowledge and accept the resignation of Kate Unterreeser from the Council on Aging.
Second. Okay, motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Alamo.
Alamo, aye.
Mr. Dauphiné.
Dauphiné.
Jefferson, aye. Mr. Austin.
Mr. Dauphiné.
Ms. Foley.
Foley, aye.
Okay. Any public comment? Nothing in the room. Well.
No hands on Zoom.
Okay. Meeting minutes.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Alamo.
I move the board vote to approve the meeting minutes for January 12th, February 8th, March 1, and May 9 of 2016 as written.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Adding quickly that reading through those 2016 minutes, it noted that the common project as it sat on the tip list, the Transportation Improvement Program, probably the earliest we received funding was 2025. So now that we're approaching 2025 or in 2025, I guess we should maybe revisit that tips list and see where that common project sits.
Yeah.
And if we're getting close to our funding stages. Okay, motion made and seconded. Mr. Alamo.
Alamo, aye.
Mr. Dauphiné.
Dauphiné, aye.
Jefferson, aye. Mr. Hoffman.
Hoffman, aye.
Ms. Foley.
Foley, aye.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All right. Motion made and seconded. Mr. Alamo.
Alamo, aye.
Mr. Dauphiné.
Dauphiné.
Jefferson, aye. Mr. Foley.
Hoffman, aye.
Mr. Hoffman, Ms. Foley.
Foley, aye.
Okay. Declare us adjourned. Thank you all.